Today, you'll join me on a journey through the history of one of the greatest black bands of all time. Imagine a mission that unites people from all corners of the world, spreading a message of joy and optimism. This was the vision that Maurice White, the visionary founder of Earth, Wind and Fire, had in mind. From a young age, he dreamed of creating a universal atmosphere through music, and that's exactly what he achieved. By combining the best of funk, jazz, soul, gospel, and disco music. This iconic band sold over 90 million albums and left an eternal legacy. Do you remember the first time you heard September? That contagious rhythm, the vibrant vocals, and the feeling of pure happiness? Or maybe it was Fantasy that took you on a magical journey, or After the Love Has Gone that touched your heart with its passionate melody. These songs aren't just hits, they're anthems of a golden era of music.
After the love is gone,
In the 70s, attending an Earth, Wind and Fire concert was a unique experience. With up to 16 musicians synchronized on stage, pyrotechnics, lighting effects, and magic tricks, every performance was a breathtaking spectacle. But behind all this brilliance, there were dark moments. Some music critics of the time attacked their lyrics, calling them cosmic rubbish, and mocked their style as pretentious. Within the band, Maurice's ego grew alongside his fame and fortune. Many members complained about unfair salaries and being sidelined. Maurice's death didn't just take away the band's founder, but also its soul and strength. Diagnosed with Parkinson's in 1991, he had to quit touring in 1994. The drama of his illness was kept secret until 2000. Stay with me, because this journey through Earth, Wind and Fire's history is just beginning. It's all detailed and full of curious facts. If you enjoy today's content, don't forget to like and share the video. Everyone knows Maurice White as the founder and vocalist of this legendary band, but his musical journey began long before that. He was born on December 19, 1941, in Memphis, Tennessee, a city buzzing with gospel, jazz, blues, rock, and R&B. Growing up during the Great Migration, he witnessed firsthand the struggles of black people leaving the American South in search of better opportunities and to escape racism. His mother, just 17 years old when he was born, faced tremendous difficulties in supporting herself and young Maurice. In search of a better life, she moved to Chicago without a guaranteed job. But before that, Maurice was left in the care of an older woman affectionately called Mama, who became a crucial mother figure in his life. This adoptive mother offered him stability and motivation, teaching him about character, determination, and self-confidence. In school, Maurice began learning the fundamentals of music, exploring different instruments, and being influenced by the vibrant musical scene in Memphis. Without access to instruments, he started his musical journey in a humble way, drumming with sticks on improvised surfaces. Like many black musicians, his first musical experience was in the church, where gospel music deeply influenced his style. Despite facing segregation and racism, Maurice found ways to nurture his talent. Neighborhood friends, whose parents supported their musical interests, shared instruments and records, allowing him to explore his potential. However, the brutal reality of racism in Memphis left a deep mark on his childhood. A disturbing incident occurred when he was attacked by police officers while delivering newspapers in a white neighborhood of the city. A painful experience reflecting the constant police brutality against black people during the civil rights movement. For a time, Maurice was pursuing a career in medicine, but he soon realized that music was his true calling. That's when he decided to deepen his studies at the Chicago Conservatory of Music. His talent quickly led him to become a studio drummer at the renowned Chess Records, where he had the opportunity to play with giants like Etta James, Muddy Waters, and Fontella Bass. In 1967, Maurice joined the popular jazz group the Ramsey Lewis Trio, where he played on 9 albums. It was during this period that he not only learned the art of performance and stagecraft, but also mastered the kalimba, an African instrument that would become a signature sound in Earth, Wind and Fire's music. In 1969, Maurice decided to put everything he had learned into practice and forge his own path, forming a songwriting partnership with keyboardist Don Whitehead and singer Wade Flemons. Together, they formed the band The Salty Peppers. Despite releasing the lively track La La Time, they couldn't reach a wide audience. Determined to find success, Maurice moved to Los Angeles, where he transformed his trio into something bigger. In 1970, after signing with Warner Brothers, he made two decisions that would change everything. The first was renaming the band Earth, Wind and Fire, inspired by the three elements of his astrological chart. This new name reflected Maurice's spiritual approach to music, transcending categories and attracting diverse artistic principles such as composition, musicianship, production, and performance. The second crucial decision was recruiting his younger brother, Verdine White, who was only 19 but ready for the musical adventure. Alongside Verdine, Maurice recruited Michael Beale on guitar, Leslie Drayton, Chester Washington, and Alex Thomas on horns, Sherry Scott on vocals, and Fillard Williams on percussion. His goal was for the band to be unique among funk bands, both in music and lifestyle. He established a strict vegetarian diet for everyone, no drugs, no alcohol. This initial lineup recorded 2 albums for Warner Brothers, the self-titled Earth, Wind and Fire in 1970 and The Need of Love in 1971. From the latter album came the single I Think About Lovin' You, which gave the group their first top 40 R&B hit. In 1971, they also created the soundtrack for Melvin Van Peebles' film Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song. In 1972, dissatisfied with the reviews and results of the first albums, Maurice dissolved the original lineup, keeping only himself and his brother Verdine. He formed a new band with younger musicians, including Philip Bailey and Jessica Cleaves on vocals, Ronnie Laws on flute and saxophone, Roland Bautista on guitar, Larry Dunn on keyboards, and Ralph Johnson on percussion. In 1974, he shared the instrument with Fred White, the brother of Maurice and Verdine. Over the years, other musicians were included, such as saxophonist Andrew Woolfolk and guitarist Johnny Graham. Disillusioned with Warner Brothers, who had signed the group primarily as a jazz act, Maurice was determined to take creative control and blend elements not just from one, but from several musical genres into a continuous fusion, creating a truly universal sound. In 1972, Earth, Wind and Fire took a decisive step that would forever change their musical trajectory. The band moved to Columbia Records under the direction of Clive Davis and finally achieved the long-desired success. With this new label, they released the album Last Days in Time, beginning to build a reputation for their innovative recordings and thrilling live shows. Today, it's not surprising that live performances have a strong visual element. But when Earth, Wind and Fire brought magic tricks to the stage during the 1970s, it was completely revolutionary. In the documentary, The Story of Funk, One Nation Under a Groove, we see how the band members wore glamorous costumes, danced with well-choreographed moves, and performed magic tricks while smoke, lights, and sparks decorated the stage. The keyboardist Larry Dunn highlighted that, besides having a well-rehearsed band musically, they wanted to offer the audience a true feast for the eyes. Guitarist Al McKay explained that the most prevalent theme in their shows was ancient Egypt, with magic tricks involving pyramids and pharaohs. Maurice, who had been interested in astrology and mysticism from an early age, deliberately used Egyptian symbols in the band's visual imagery and explored themes of Egyptology and African spirituality in the lyrics. Al McKay also mentioned that people genuinely believed they could levitate and perform incredible tricks to the point where they thought they were real magicians. These shows were crafted by renowned magicians like Doug Henning and David Copperfield, who later became one of the most successful magicians in history. Success didn't take long to arrive. The album Head to the Sky, released in 1973, reached number 27 on the pop charts with hits like the title track and Evil. In 1974, the album Open Our Eyes brought hits like Mighty Mighty and Kalimba Story, becoming the band's first platinum album. That same year, Maurice collaborated with Ramsey Lewis on the album Sun Goddess, a monumental success. During a walk under the starry sky at Caribou Ranch in Colorado, Maurice was inspired to write Shining Star, which became one of the band's biggest hits, reaching number 1 on the charts in 1975 and featuring on the multi-platinum album That's the Way of the World. The album Gratitude from the same year, also multi-platinum, included Sing a Song and Can't Hide Love.
Well, I bet you
In 1976, the album Spirit marked the final project of Charles Stepney, a talented producer and arranger who was a central figure in developing Earth, Wind & Fire's sound, contributing his expertise in complex arrangements and music production. Unfortunately, he passed away at the age of 45 due to a heart attack. Spirit features poetic ballads like Imagination, the lively On Your Face, and the gold single Getaway. At this point, the band was breaking attendance records and their sound became increasingly refined. All in all, the best of Earth, Wind & Fire Volume 1, I Am, and Raise catapulted Earth, Wind & Fire to stardom with a timeless catalog of hits. These are just a few of them. All this commercial success came at a cost. Under constant pressure from Columbia to create hits, the band began to compete with themselves, both creatively and in terms of past commercial success. The live shows grew exponentially, from 4 trucks to 12, plus 2 planes, which combined with the costs of costumes and crew, which included up to 78 people, kept Maurice in debt. The expenses of the performances and the frequency of album releases meant that they often recorded at high costs without enough time to recover the investment. Maurice seemed financially stable, but not as wealthy as he could have been because he used his own money to cover the band's financial shortfalls. The group had a solid touring base, but this required constantly being on the road to generate income. For them, this meant always being on the move, making it difficult to lead a normal life, especially when it came to having a family and being present in day-to-day life. Faces, a double album recorded after a trip to Egypt, was one of the last albums where they sounded like themselves. But it was a commercial disappointment for Columbia. That was one of the records I was disappointed with in terms of performance because I thought it was one of our last great records, reflected vocalist Philip Bailey. By the mid-1980s, the atmosphere within Earth, Wind & Fire began to sour. Discontent grew as members felt disappointed that their ideas were not being considered. As the band's creator and director, Maurice had always maintained creative control. He believed that avoiding group creation would prevent endless discussions, keeping the vision clear and focused. However, this leadership style began to feel like a dictatorship to some. Maurice wrote about this in his book, My Life with Earth, Wind & Fire. Over time, I believe my clarity about what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it became a source of frustration for some of them. Maurice attempted to ease tensions by speaking personally with each member while still holding firm to his vision for the band. This didn't always work. He recalled, "Sometimes they would express their complaints or frustrations to me, other times to other band members. Sometimes we would talk about personal frustrations, and sometimes we would argue face to face. The tension escalated further with guitarist Al McKay. Frustrated by the unequal distribution of money, he asked to leave. Maurice remembered, "Al could no longer tolerate my leadership. We had heated arguments, so serious that sometimes we had to leave the studio to avoid completely ruining the atmosphere." The situation reached a breaking point during a tour in South America when Al announced that he wanted to leave the band. He was officially dismissed shortly afterward when he refused to fly to the next show in Mexico. This moment marked the beginning of a turbulent phase for Earth, Wind & Fire. After the major failure of the album Electric Universe in 1983, the band hit one of its lowest points when Maurice decided to put Earth, Wind & Fire on an indefinite hiatus. According to Philip Bailey in his book Shining Star, the news devastated the members and caught them completely by surprise, leaving many without a means of livelihood. The vocalist described the disastrous consequences. For the rest of the band, the breakup was a nightmare. Some members lost their homes and fortunes, and some needed therapy after having nervous breakdowns. Even Maurice's brothers weren't spared. Maurice and Verdine weren't speaking during this terrible period, and Freddie had already moved on. Percussionist Ralph Johnson was deeply affected by the news and had to work in very different jobs for a time, first in construction and then as a salesman in an electronics store. Philip Bailey also faced tough times. Initially, he managed to launch a solo career and released 3 albums within a few years. However, when the last of these albums, Inside Out, was released in 1986 and didn't perform well, his solo career hit a major roadblock. Columbia decided to drop him, leading Philip into a period of personal and professional crisis. He described the painful experience. "I put on my best expression, smiled, and walked out the door, beaten down and depressed. I had waited all this time, and now I was plunged into a cash flow crisis due to the downtime and broken promises." Maurice White was always a man of many talents. By the late 1970s, he began venturing into record production. Until 1978, he produced under the Columbia Records label, but it was when he decided to create his own label, the American Recording Company, ARC, that he truly began to make his mark. RC produced albums for Earth, Wind & Fire, as well as artists like Denise Williams, The Emotions, Ray Kennedy, and Ren Woods. However, in the early 1980s, Maurice had to deal with the collapse of this venture. The label was established at the height of the band's success, a year after the release of hits like Fantasy and Serpentine Fire. In his book, he acknowledged that ARC's dependence on the band led to its downfall when other negative factors came into play. Like many members of Earth, Wind & Fire, Maurice also ventured into a solo career. He released his self-titled album, Maurice White. But in 1987, he decided to reunite all the members of Earth, Wind & Fire, and this reunion was met with great enthusiasm by both the band members and fans around the world. However, by the early 1990s, it became increasingly clear that not everything was well with Maurice. He battled Parkinson's disease for decades. According to CBS, he had already been diagnosed for some time when he decided to stop touring with Earth, Wind & Fire in 1994. This was a crucial moment for the rest of the band, who had to decide if they could continue without their founder. Ralph Johnson recalls, "We had to make a decision. Could we continue without Maurice? Would the audience accept us without Maurice?" The answer was yes. With original members Philip Bailey, Verdine White, and Ralph Johnson, Earth, Wind & Fire continues to thrive. In 2016, Maurice White passed away at his home in Los Angeles, as reported by The Guardian. But he never truly left his beloved band. Throughout its existence, they continued to spread Maurice's message of love, hope, and cosmic awareness. In 2000, Earth, Wind & Fire was finally inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. At the ceremony, while Maurice gave a very short speech, joking that he was at a loss for words, Philip Bailey made it clear that celebrating Earth, Wind & Fire means celebrating Maurice himself. In a touching tribute, Philip declared, "You honor a man with vision and tenacity and courage, one who had a dream and tackled that dream and fought against every obstacle." Did you enjoy today's video? Want more stories like this? Just subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and share this content with other music lovers.